Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
It's cold for me. It is. It's almost June, dude. Right, Jake? Hello and welcome to the GSMC television podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC podcast network. And I'm your phase one, masked and distanced, socially distanced and sanitized host, Howard Fletcher. And I'm joined as always with my trusted engineer, Jack the Black Pug. And we're thrilled and elated to be here with you once again. If you're new to the show, thank you for giving us a try. We aim to please around here. Stick around, and I'm sure you'll hear something that you like. At least we'll try to give you something that you like. We want you to keep coming back. And if you're one of our loyal return listeners, you know how we feel about you. You're the reason that I am here. You're the reason that Jack is here. We want you to be here. We have a jam-packed show for you today. CBS has released its fall schedule. Tom Hanks and Apple TV, well, they can add their names to John Fithian's S list. You know what that means, if you're a listener. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is weighing a schedule change, allegedly. I'll be giving you my quick take on the new Star show, Hightown. I'll just tell you right now, it was aight. And as always, I'm going to cut in with breaking news. And I have come to a decision about Creepshow. Yeah. So, as always, let's start with some breaking news. Wendy Williams. Wendy is taking a hiatus from her daytime talk show due to symptoms of fatigue surrounding Graves' disease, according to Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, and some other outlets. The Wendy Williams Show, which has been filming remote episodes from Williams' New York City home during the coronavirus pandemic, will be on hiatus through at least this week. And by the time you hear this, it'll probably be next week as well. A return date has not been set at this time. Here's a quote. Recently, Wendy has been dealing with symptoms from her Graves' disease, which is causing fatigue. In consultation with her doctor, as a precautionary measure, she will be taking some time off as she continues to receive treatment, a spokesperson for the show said in a statement to Variety. Quote, we look forward to welcoming Wendy back soon and continuing the Wendy at Home shows. More updates on a return date will follow, end quote. Well, I don't watch the Wendy Williams show. I don't know if you do. Yeah, I wish her the best. I can't say I'm a fan, but I don't want anybody. Graves' disease sounds very serious. So I hope that she gets well soon. Wendy first announced to her viewers that she was diagnosed with Graves' disease early in 2018. Graves' disease is a condition that causes the immune system to attack the thyroid. Here is some more breaking news. Amazon's Homecoming, the show Homecoming, will forever be known as the show that brought Julia Roberts to her first regular role on a TV series. But there was a whole lot more to it in its first season as it delved into a mystery surrounding the company behind a program ostensibly designed to help veterans. Now, I watched Homecoming, and when I saw this story pop up last night, I realized I don't really remember the plot. I mean, I do remember that it had something to do with returning vets in this mysterious hospital and all this kind of stuff, but I just didn't really recall the plot. So when I saw the advertisements for it, I thought it was a brand new show. Anyway, Roberts is no longer on camera. Now, she remains the executive producer of the show, but season 2 of Homecoming deepens the mystery by introducing a new central character who's going to be played by Janelle Monáe, who apparently is building her acting career. I don't know if she's still going to be recording music or entertaining in that way. I'm sure she will, but she apparently is pursuing acting in a very serious way. Janelle Monáe's character, she's introduced waking up in a boat in the middle of a lake with no idea of how she got there or who she is. Always a good way to enter a show. Stephen James and Hong Chow reprised their roles, and Chris Cooper, excellent actor, and Joan Cusack, who we don't see enough of, they're also going to be in the show. Season 2 debuts Friday, which is the day this episode drops, and I may check it out. I don't think you're going to have seen season 1 to enjoy season 2, but you can always go to YouTube and Man of Recaps or whoever did a recap video on Homecoming and catch up. Here is some serious breaking news, which caught me very much by surprise. I think a lot of people, in a surprise move, Ruby Rose, the star of the CW, yes, I have some more CW news on this show, the CW's Batwoman has decided to leave the television series ahead of its already announced second season.
What did you say?
The exact reason she is leaving remains unclear.
What did you say?
But the show will go on. Warner Brothers, the studio behind Batwoman, and the CW have both committed to creating a second season with a new series lead. Quote, "I have made the very difficult decision to not return to Batwoman next season," said Rose in a statement. Quote, "This was not a decision I made lightly, as I have the utmost respect for the cast, crew, and everyone involved with the show in both Vancouver and Los Angeles. I am beyond appreciative to the showrunners, whose names I am not going to try to pronounce because I will destroy them, for not only giving me this incredible opportunity, but for welcoming me in to the DC universe they have so beautifully created. Thank you to Peter Roth, I can pronounce that name, and Mark Pedowitz, and the teams at Warner Brothers and the CW who put so much into the show and always believed in me. Thank you to everyone who made season 1 a success. I am truly grateful." End quote. The CW had, in January, renewed Batwoman and a dozen other series for the 2021 season. After Rose revealed last September that she had undergone emergency surgery for 2 herniated discs, that's serious, questions arose as to which project had contributed to the injuries she sustained. But a source familiar with the situation tells Variety that Rose's decision, quote, "had nothing to do with her health or injury," end quote. Batman Season 1 averaged a 0.5 rating among adults 18 to 49. I know you guys don't like me going over these numbers, but that's a pretty decent rating. After 7 days of delayed viewing, putting it in a tie for third behind The Flash and the final season of Arrow in the CW rankings. Total viewership-wise, the show's freshman season averaged 1.7 million viewers in live plus 7, mean in the 7 days that which it was aired, which again places it as the network's third most watched show. Warner Brothers Television, the CW, and Berlanti Productions, and Berlanti Productions makes all those superhero shows except for all the ones I like. They don't make Supergirl, I don't think, and I don't like Supergirl. But the other ones they make on the CW. Thank Ruby for her contributions to the success of our first season and wish her all the best, said Warner Brothers TV and CW and Berlanti Productions in a joint statement. They all got together and wrote a statement. Here's more for the statement. Quote, "The studio and the network are firmly committed to Batwoman's second season and the long-term future, and we, along with the show's talented creative team, look forward to sharing its new direction, including the casting of a new lead actress and a member of the LGBTQ community in the coming months." Well, I've said on the show before that I do like Batwoman. I didn't think it was a great show. I just thought they did the character right. I will say this. Ruby Rose did a fine job, and my criticism that I'm about to give you of the casting of Ruby Rose has nothing to do with her acting or her performance on the show. She did the character proud. However, that character needs to have a larger physical stature than Ruby Rose has. I mean, she is a very petite woman. And even though she's tough, I don't care how tough and wiry you are, you're not going to be able to kick a 250-pound man across the room like Batwoman does. And, I mean, does in that show. And so it really should have been somebody with a larger stature. And hopefully they get a more athletic person to play that role who can also act as well as Ruby Rose. I'm sorry to see her go, but it was always a stretch to see someone of her physical stature play Batwoman. Next, we're going to talk about CBS's fall schedule, who they locked in, and what I think about them. I don't even think I watch a CBS show other than 60 Minutes, but I'll let you know. Go get some refreshments, and I will be back after we pay some bills. Thanks for listening.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
All right, back. I don't know, Jack. I don't know who to pick. I don't know who to pick for Batwoman. Whoever it is, I think they should get an unknown, but whoever it is should be somebody who's built like a pole vaulter or maybe a women's volleyball player or, somebody who's more athletic than Ruby Rose. All props go to Ruby Rose. I wish her the best in her next project. And I think it's going to be a good move for her to leave Batwoman, but it was historic for her to play that role in the first, I believe, lesbian lead in a show. Definitely the first LGBTQ superhero. So, good job, Ruby Rose. All right, this is going to be one of those segments where I go over a fall schedule for a network. This one is CBS, not the most exciting network. If you aren't interested in this type of stuff, you should go to the next segment. I don't want anyone to listen to something that's going to bore them. However, you might find it interesting. I'm going to find it interesting because a lot of these shows I've never heard of, and this is the only way I hear of them when I have a segment like this. So anyway, CBS is planning to bring back the vast majority of its scripted lineup come fall, despite the ongoing production shutdown caused by the coronavirus pandemic, which only tells me that they either did a lot of filming ahead of time or... I don't know. Or, I guess they did a lot of filming ahead of time. They certainly... Or they plan to do a heck of a lot this summer. That must be it. But anyway, their Monday lineup is going to be, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go on every day, and I'm just going to go down their primetime lineup, name these shows. If I have an opinion about them, I will say. If you have an opinion about them, please tweet me at FletchDC or email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com. Okay, no further ado. CBS, Monday nights at 8 o'clock, The Neighborhood. I think that's the Cedric the Entertainer show. Haven't watched it, but guess it's back. 8:30, Bob Loves Abishola, or Abishola. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Actually, it's Bob Hart. It's one of those deals. I know I saw commercials for it during football season, so I know it's a returning show, situation comedy. 9 o'clock, All Rise. That's the procedural courtroom drama, which I am not a fan of based on the commercials solely. I just did not like that portrayal of that particular black female judge in the commercials. Let me make that stipulation. Happy for everyone connected with the production that it was renewed. I want to make that clear too. Congratulations. Not a fan of the show. 10 o'clock, Bull. 10 to 11 at the show Bull. And that might be the 4th or 5th season for Bull, if not longer. It's had a pretty good run. A lot of these shows I'm familiar with because they run commercials during football season. Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock, NCIS, which seems to have been on since the beginning of time. It's still on. Good for you. At 9 o'clock, FBI, another Dick Wolf production. 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, FBI Most Wanted, as Dick Wolf will do. When he's got something good, he spins it off to the nth degree. If these series continue to get good ratings, expect to see FBI human trafficking, FBI narcotics, FBI cannibals, FBI anything. It's going to be going on and on to the break of dawn. Wednesday at 8 o'clock, Survivor, another zombie show that will never die. 9 o'clock, The Amazing Race. That's perfect double up. 10 o'clock, SEAL Team. Now, is SEAL Team a Dick Wolf show? No, just checked it. It's a guy named Ben Cavill. So good for you, Ben. I'm not trying to give everything to Dick Wolf. He just seems to be the guy who just knows how to latch on to something when it's hot. Thursday, 8 o'clock, Young Sheldon. That's headed toward zombie status. Thursday, at 8:30 after Young Sheldon is Be Positive. That's a new show, sitcom. At 9 o'clock on Thursdays, Mom, the sitcom, comes on with the lovely Anna Faris and Allison Janney. Two great actresses. That show is also one that seems to be sticking around for a longer time than I anticipated. Good for you. 9:30, The Unicorn. That's a show that has the great actor Walton Goggins on it. Good for him. He's collecting a check. The show didn't look particularly good to me by the commercials, but I always like to see when an actor that's been working a long time regularly, but hasn't really become a big star. He's one of those guys that everybody in Hollywood knows, and every viewer knows from his face, but if you go around and ask people who Walton Goggins is, you're not going to get the type of response you'd get if you asked them if they knew who, say, Matthew Perry is. And I'm not trying to take down Matthew Perry. Just Walton Goggins is a much better actor. I hope he can collect a regular check from this for a while, but I don't think it's going to be on his highlight reel. And at 10 o'clock, Evil, I think that's the police procedural with a supernatural twist with my man Mike Coulter, Luke Cage in it. I have not watched the show yet, but I understand it's pretty good from friends of mine who have seen it. I just, I feel good for him because I like him as an actor. Well done. Friday, 8 o'clock, MacGyver reboot. Nothing more I'm going to say about that. Friday, 9 o'clock, Magnum PI reboot. Nothing more I'm going to say about that. Friday, 10 o'clock, Blue Bloods. The only thing I'll say about Blue Bloods is that my 90-year-old mother likes the show. That's all I'm going to say about Friday. Friday, if you can go out on Fridays, probably time better spent than staying up watching CBS. Or you could do something radical, like read a book. Saturday, From 8 to 9, and from 9 to 10, those 2 hours are blocked off as Crime Time Saturday. Now, I had no idea what this was, so I had to go to Wikipedia. And Wikipedia says, Crime Time Saturday is the official branding of a programming block that started in 2004 and 5 on CBS. The first 2 hours feature reruns of CBS crime drama procedurals, which include the CSI franchise, Criminal Minds, NCIS, NCIS Los Angeles, Cold Case, Flashpoint, etc. Or the CBS News magazine program, 48 Hours Mystery. So in other words, Crime Time Saturday is whatever they want to dump into it that has to do with crime. And at 10 o'clock on Saturday, after your 2 Crime Time Saturday hours, you can, your dessert is 48 hours, the regular show. So you get your Reboot Friday and your Crime Time Saturday. Sunday on CBS this fall, 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, 60 Minutes. I might sound boring, but that's the only show that I've mentioned so far that I watch regularly, or I have a possibility of watching regularly, and that's it. Sunday at 8 o'clock to 9 p.m., The Equalizer. This is the new show. This is the one with Queen Latifah busting heads. And so I'm going to be looking forward to maybe taking a peek at that because I love Queen Latifah. I hope that it's good and it's not just comical or like Christy Love. If you don't know who Christy Love is, go to YouTube. I just don't want her to say you're under arrest, sugar. 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, NCIS Los Angeles. And then to wrap up the whole week, 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock on Sunday night, you got NCIS New Orleans. And there you have it. That is the fall lineup for CBS. Much of it, even though I haven't seen those shows, I know that they're the same old shows because I watch football on CBS. Next, I am going to be talking about, it's all breaking news, next one. We're going to talk about Tom Hanks and Apple Plus TV and how they got John Fithian probably his panties in a knot now again because of what they're going to do with their movie. News about the Oscars and how they're going to maybe make a scheduling change. And then some news at Fox. And that will be it. So go get some refreshments, order pizza. Jack and I are going to get some refreshments, and we'll be back right after this.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching.
Hey!
The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Okay. Did you get the trash? All right, I'll get it. All right, we're back. Now we're going to talk about Tom Hanks and John Fithian. Well, I'm adding John Fithian. He's not really part of this story. But here is some more breaking news. Apple TV Plus has bought the worldwide rights from Sony Pictures to the Tom Hanks World War II drama Greyhound, following a bidding war for the movie, which was previously set for a Father's Day theatrical release. Those of you who've listened to the show before know that when I mention theatrical releases, John Fithian's name usually comes up. John is the CEO of the Theater Owners of America Association. I think that's what it's called, but basically he is the head of the lobbying organization for people who own movie theaters. I'll get back to him later. 6-month-old Apple TV Plus announced the deal Tuesday. The streaming service did not disclose when it will release Greyhound. Sony had originally scheduled Greyhound to be a theatrically released movie in the United States on June 12th, but the release was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Greyhound is set in the early days of World War II as an international convoy of 37 Allied ships, led by Hanks's captain, Ernest Krauss. He sounds like he should be a Nazi captain, but he's an American captain. Crosses the treacherous North Atlantic while being hotly pursued by wolf packs of Nazi submarines. The studio had announced in early March that the film has shifted its release date back 5 weeks from May 8th to June 12th. Sony also released the first trailer of Greyhound in early March, opening with Hanks in prayer and about to set sail. He then reveals to his crew that this is his first crossing of the Atlantic, just to settle their nerves a little bit.
Yes.
The crew also finds out they are entering territory where plane cover cannot reach them for 5 full days. The ship, which is operating under the code name Greyhound, manages to destroy a Nazi sub, setting off a celebration and instilling the crew the confidence in the captain.
Hell yeah!
What you did yesterday got us here today, one of the crew tells Hanks. Stephen Graham, Rob Morgan, and Elizabeth Shue co-star in the film along with Hanks. Gary Goetzman produces the film. Greyhound is based on C.S. Forester's novel The Good Shepherd. Aaron Schneider is directing from Hanks' script. The news about the Apple TV Plus deal was first reported by Deadline. Deadline's a good website. You should check it out. It's very interesting that Hanks wrote the script because I know he's somewhat of a World War II history buff, and that's why he's connected to so many projects about World War II. He's very much a student of it. So that should be a good movie. He's always in some pretty good, heartwarming movies. That one sounds, I wonder if it's based on a true story. It does not say that in the synopsis, and that's quite a feat if they were able to avoid the Nazis in what I'm assuming is the North Atlantic. Greyhound joins a growing list of movies that were originally slated for theatrical release, but then opted for a digital debut after the coronavirus pandemic resulted in most U.S. movie theaters remaining closed until July at the earliest. That list includes, and we talk about them on this show, Scoob, Trolls World Tour, which started this whole mess, The King of Staten Island, The Lovebirds, Artemis Fowl, My Spy, and Bad Trip. Those of you who are listeners who will remember this story, remember that the Theater Owners of America threw down the gauntlet, and they said they would not do business with Universal Pictures for pulling out of Trolls World Tour, pulling out of the theaters. And so I told you this is going to be the wave of the future, prepared to stream a lot of new movies, not just because of the pandemic, because I think distributors are going to find through this pandemic, they found that this is a much better way to get your stuff out there and seen and get your money back. And that's all I got to say about that for the 15th time. Some more breaking news. The 93rd Oscars aren't until February, but the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences is considering postponing the big night, according to multiple sources. The sources, who spoke on the condition of anonymity, as they always do, say definitive plans are far from being concrete at this juncture. The telecast is currently set for February 28th of 2021 on ABC. It's likely they'll be postponed, one of the sources familiar with the matter told Variety. However, that person cautioned that the details, including potential new dates, have not been fully discussed nor formally proposed yet. Another source says the date is currently unchanged at ABC, and I'm sure it's still on ABC's calendar, right where they said it was going to be, which was February 28th, because they need to sell ad time, and they can't sell ad time for a date that's up in the air. When new temporary rule changes for Oscar eligibility were announced in April because of COVID-19, Academy President David Rubin told Variety that it was too soon to know how the 2021 Oscar telecast could change in the wake of the pandemic. It's impossible to know what the landscape will be, he said. We know we want to celebrate film, but we do not know exactly what form it will take. Now, as I've reviewed before, under the usual rules, a film has to have a 7-day theatrical release in Los Angeles County, of course, to qualify for Oscar eligibility. Okay, but for this year's Oscars, the films released digitally can qualify if the studio had originally planned for a theatrical release. I guess much like Greyhound that I reported about in the preceding story. I think everyone is sympathetic to the filmmaker's plight, and we're here to support our members in the film community, Rubin said. It makes sense when we don't really know what's to come in terms of the availability of theatrical exhibition. We need to make allowances for this year only, and during this time when theaters are not open, so great film work can be seen and celebrated. They don't want the filmmakers to hold this stuff back because they want to wait and show it in the theater just so they can be considered for the Oscars. Now, I happen to think this is going to be something that's going to eventually become permanent, but again, they keep saying it's going to be temporary, and I know they want to appease the theater owners. The new rule changes also include allowing Oscar qualifying theatrical runs to take place in New York, Chicago, Miami, Atlanta, and the Bay Area instead of just Los Angeles. Why they leave the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area off this list, I don't know. I don't like it. The Academy declined to comment for this story. It's unclear whether postponing the Oscars will also mean that the Academy will allow films released after the year-end deadline to qualify for the 2021 Oscars. We will see. I only bring this up on the TV podcast because, like I said, I think streaming films are going to be under consideration, not only this year, but in the future. Exclusively streaming films, that is. And some more breaking news. Fox has canceled the multicam comedy Outmatched after only one season. Now, I only bring this up because, one, it's an article that popped up in my email box. I get, I'm connected to all the trades and they let me know when something gets canceled. But I'd never even heard of this dang on show. Wow. The news comes on the same day the network announced it had renewed Last Man Standing and The Resident. Both fantastic shows. Come on, man. With the cancellation, the only Fox show awaiting word on its fate for next year is the freshman drama Prodigal Son, which sources say is likely to return. Now, I have not seen Prodigal Son, so I cannot give you an opinion about its quality. However, I have seen commercials for it during football games. like many of these shows they're on broadcast television. And to me, it looks like a ripoff of, say, the Hannibal Lecter stories, Red Dragon. Only instead of, if Will Graham had been Hannibal Lecter's son, then that seems to me what Prodigal Son is about. Also, what I find very interesting about it is Michael Sheen is in it. Does Michael Sheen have a clone? Because that dude is like in a lot of stuff lately. I want you to look at his Wikipedia page and check out how many productions he is in. That guy must work all the time or else he's cloned. Okay, it looks like I've run out of time, so we got to go pay some bills. Listen, I'll be right back. Next, I'm going to talk about the premiere of Hightown, which is a series that premiered on Starz this past Sunday. I thought it was pretty good. I'll give you my complete take when you get back. I'm going to go pay some bills, go get a snack, and I'll be right back. Thanks for listening.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right. Sit down. Well, pick that up then. All right, we're back. And this last Sunday on Starz, they premiered a show called Hightown, which I happened to record on my DVR. It looked interesting. Like I say all the time on this show, you don't have time to watch everything, but I made a little time to watch this premiere to see if this was a show I wanted to invest some time in. So I'll just start by saying this, and I'm going to try to keep spoilers at a minimum. I don't think this will be a spoiler review, but I'm just going to tell you what I thought about the show and not tell you the details. Hightown is one of those shows that's just kind of there. You know what I mean? It's, there's nothing glaringly wrong with it. Just that there's nothing so intriguing about it that you want to watch it necessarily week to week or even binge it once Starz has aired all the episodes. So I can't necessarily say I recommend you start watching this show. It's just a fairly standard murder mystery police procedural set against the backdrop of a town that most people outside the Northeast, including this guy, I'm technically in the Mid-Atlantic, or the LGBTQIA plus community know much about. I didn't know anything about Provincetown. Nothing. So in that respect, it was very interesting. The series was created by Rebecca Cutter, perhaps best known for Gotham, which was a show that I watched. You know, Gotham went up and down. I'm a big Batman fan, and I thought the premise was pretty cool as a prequel to, you know, the Batman saga, and it was pretty good. This show resembles Gotham in no way that I can see so far. This show is one of those shows that you might hear somebody say the location is one of the characters, and I would agree with that. Jerry Bruckheimer is one of the executive producers. I can't say that I've been a raving fan of his shows, but he's had great success on television. The show was shot in and around P-Town, which is what people call Provincetown, and Cutter leans into its reputation as a party town and a safe haven for the gay community. Jackie, one of the main characters of the show, if not the main protagonist of the show, she calls it the lesbian Shangri-La. And she's also an agent in the National Marine Fisheries Service. Now, she happens to make that statement while she's in rehab. She's talking to a psychiatrist. And, you know, in her case, the fact that it's the lesbian Shangri-La may be her downfall. We have yet to see. We've seen the trope of the hard partying cop who is more or less put on the path of sobriety or some sort of life redemption by the case that he or she is working that they just can't shake. And it looks like that might be the case here. I don't know. As I said, Jackie had this conversation in rehab, so that's not a big spoiler. First episode, that's where she was. Now, I will say this would be the first time we've seen that hard partying cop be a fish cop, which I guess I knew existed, but this is the first time I've formally seen somebody who works as law enforcement for fishery, for people fishing, I thought it was the Coast Guard that did this stuff, but apparently this is one of these local agencies that is technically law enforcement. Now, I didn't come up with that term fish cop. There was one that was used in the show. So again, I learned some terminology in the show, and I learned about Provincetown in the show, at least the television version of both. Junior's boss, Junior's a character in there in the show, calls Jackie a fish cop when they are at their favorite watering hole. It's a bar scene, typical bar scene, or at least the typical P-Town bar scene, and he calls her a fish cop, so I wanted to make note of that. Now, I wonder what the people of Provincetown are going to think about this show, because according to this show, at least from my impression the first episode gave me, the people of this town are concerned with partying and fishing, and it's in that order. That's about it. Now, Cutter, the director, does a good job of capturing the provincial feeling. I mean, I really did feel like I was in a particular fish town. I didn't feel like this was a show that was being, filmed in Los Angeles, and they wanted me to believe that I was there. I felt like I was there. And in fact, one of the characters, and this isn't a big thing, it could have been done I know for a fact that they did film this in Provincetown, but, you got people there in Patriots gear and Red Sox gear, and, you can see that everyone around there is, a Bostonian, or at least the townies are from that part of the world, and they all have that particular accent. Now, I will tell you that my friends that are from that part of the world will probably tell me that their accents sucked, because I hear that a lot from Bostonians who hear other people who speak Bostonian or New Englander in the movies. But for this guy out of D.C., it sounded authentic enough for me. Now, the state cop of the show, a guy named Ray, his side of the story feels like a standard grade cop drama. He's quirky, but his story, when we were walking around with Ray, it's a little bit more like a cop show than when we're with Jackie, which is kind of like the party side of the show, at least in this first episode. We're more interested in seeing how Jackie gets involved with the case in an effort to get the image of a body that she discovers during the episode out of her mind, out of her head. And she also wants to occupy herself as she tries to stay sober. And that sounds pretty convoluted. I gave you a whole lot of things. I'm trying not to spoil the plot, but there's a lot of things going on. But it works, in this show. I mean, I will say that. I can't say this is a show I didn't understand what was going on. I knew absolutely what was going on. There's a whole lot of partying going on. Like I said, I wondered if the people from Provincetown will feel like this is representative of the place. Now, let me add, this guy wouldn't mind going to Provincetown. It just looks like a pretty live place to be. But that's me. As to vacation. To visit, maybe, even for a day. Now, the question is, will Jackie be able to stay to do what she needs to do while still trying to party and hook up in her party-tastic hometown? Will she be able to stay sober and stay on the rails, or is she going to always be tempted to go off the rails? At least that's what I think is going to happen with her. And that's pretty much where the rubber meets the road in Hightown. Like I said, Ray, the cop, his story is pretty, right now, straightforward. Jackie is the one who that I'm kind of very interested in seeing where her story is going, and that's only because her story has the potential of blowing up. As far as sex and skin goes, because it is on Stars, well, there's lots. There's lots and lots and lots. From sex scenes between Jackie and her hookups, because she picks up a girl or two in these bars, and there's lots of skin at the carnival. Now they're there during Carnival. All right, that's where this series picks up. So you got a lot of people in the streets dancing, and you have a lot of people in costumes and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of revealing costumes. But, you know, I think that the character of this town is such that I don't think people wear a lot of clothes anyway. At least that's the impression that I got. I mean, Jackie's landlord is like in a cutoff t-shirt and a Speedo while he's like watering his lawn. So it's just kind of weird. But you know what? It's not gratuitous. It seems a matter of fact. Again, the impression that I got is that this is just what P-Town is about, not that we're trying to show you a lot of skin because we want you to watch the show to see that. I don't think that was the case. So I would say if you're looking for something to watch, stream it. You know, Hightown isn't prestige TV by a long shot, but it's also not a boring CBS procedural either. And I know I just talked about CBS and I sound like I'm like trying to clown them, but you know, it's just not. It's something different. It's a good look at a town that has a unique culture, and especially for stodgy Cape Cod, there's lots of sex, and the lead character's journey to sobriety is probably going to be pretty interesting. Now, it helps that Monica Raymond, who's the actress who plays Jackie, who I've been talking about partying all the time, she apparently is a Dick Wolf alum from the Chicago Fire PD Med trilogy he has going on over at NBC. So she channels her inner troubled cop very well. And one thing I'll say about Dick, well, I say a lot of good things about Dick Wolf, but very seldom have I seen a Dick Wolf production where I found fault in the acting for what they were asked to do. The plot might have been a little crazy, but the actors were tight. So that's my take on Hightown. I think I'll continue to watch it. It could go left or right. We will see. I'll let you know. But it's worth the watch. Take a peek at it. Let me know what you think. Email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com or tweet me at FletchDC. Next, I have some breaking news about Mr. Explosion, Michael Bay. Be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the backdoors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
All right. Mineral water is the best. Mineral water. That's right. We're back, and here is some breaking news from Deadline. Michael Fleming Jr., in fact. He's the writer. Former Paramount production chief Adam Goodman and his company Invisible Narratives have teamed with Michael Bay. Yes, that Michael Bay, Transformer Michael Bay, Transformers Michael Bay, to produce Songbird, a pandemic thriller that plans to take an unusual approach to shooting a movie in Los Angeles during the lockdown. It will begin production within 5 weeks and might be the first film to shoot in the city since mid-March. The filmmakers are providing remote training for the actors. None of the participants would say exactly how they plan to shoot a movie at a time when guilds are still compiling their own safety protocols so that production can resume. And Fleming writes that the filmmakers behind Songbird have screened their plans by the guilds and they're good to go. How they're going to do this, we still don't know. The film is ostensibly a taut thriller in the spirit of Paranormal Activity in Cloverfield, and it takes place 2 years in the future. The pandemic has not gone away. Lockdowns, this is what it's about, okay? The pandemic has not gone away 2 years from now. Lockdowns have been rolled back and then reinstated as it becomes even more serious as the virus continues to mutate.
What did you say?
Wow. Now, the reporter who wrote this article doesn't think that there are any supernatural elements involved in this plot, but there's a governmental conspiracy, of course, and paranoia and how it impacts the cast of characters who remain in lockdown. Casting is now underway. Okay. The film is low budget. That's according to this article, okay? They didn't say what the budget is, but it's low. And the funding is in place, probably because they didn't have hard time finding any because it's low budget. But it will be sold at the upcoming virtual Cannes market by ICM Partners, which they obviously distribute movies or sell movies. And there's a proof of the concept sizzle reel that will be used to sell the picture. Now, what the sizzle reel is, most of you probably know, it's what filmmakers use. They film a little concept. It's almost like a trailer, but obviously it couldn't be a trailer because they'd have the whole movie if it was a trailer. But it's enough to show investors to get them interested in investing in the movie. Now, why am I talking about this film on the TV podcast? Because if I were a betting man, and I'm not because I don't have any money, you need money to gamble, but if I were, I would wager that this film is going to go straight to video on demand. And I'm not saying that because I think it'll be bad and because it's a low budget picture and all of that. I think there's a good chance that it will be bad. But that's not why I'm saying it. I'm saying it because it's low budget and the subject matter is what it is. It's about a pandemic. I don't think you necessarily want to be sitting next to people in a theater watching a movie about the pandemic that hasn't gone away. It's tailor-made for home viewing at this time. As I've said on this show way too many times for those who are regular listeners, this is the future of cinema.
What are you saying?
Streaming and video on demand is the future, especially for films that are not big budget tentpole flicks. I think a film like this, depending on the budget, they only, call it low, but if it's not more than, I will say, $20 million for them to make this film, which it probably won't be, given what it sounds like it's about, probably be less than that, they'll make their money back, plus more, especially if it's a good movie, if it's a decent movie, like decent as far as interest, like Paranormal Activity decent, or Cloverfield. Neither of those movies were Oscar contenders, but certainly they made their money back because people wanted to see them. They gave them thrills. And maybe this one will give people a creepy feeling. I don't know. I'm not sure who wants to watch a movie like about an out of control pandemic in the middle of a pandemic, or certainly on the heels of it, hopefully by the time this comes out. But the fact of the matter is that during the first few weeks of the stay-at-home orders, Steven Soderbergh's film, Contagion, was one of the most streamed movies on the web. That's a fact. And say what you will about Michael Bay. Dude knows how to make a buck when there's a buck to be made. And so I think this is probably going to be a sure thing for him. Even though it's a creepy movie, I don't think I want to see a movie about a contagion or a pandemic. But that's what's out there. That's the breaking news for you. Here is the real breaking news. The mythical, unreleased version of the 2017 superhero film Justice League will finally see the light of day on Warner Home Media's HBO Max in 2021. After years of campaigning from talent and comic book fans, the studio behind the DC Films ensemble Justice League will offer original director Zack Snyder's cut of the film, the director's cut of the film, which saw heroes Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, The Flash, Cyborg, and Superman share the same screen. Director Zack Snyder announced on the news on a live Q&A Wednesday, which is yesterday, following a virtual screening of his Superman film, Man of Steel. Zack Snyder made this announcement. Snyder completed the majority of the work on Justice League in 2016, but stepped away from post-production and editing in the light of a family tragedy that happened at the time. Now, Warner Brothers brought in Avengers director Joss Whedon to finish the job. And the varying styles of both men. Now, you just think about it. Think about Watchmen, the Watchmen movie, and Man of Steel, and think of the Marvel Avengers movies and the difference in those styles, okay? The varying styles of both men led many fans to believe that Snyder had envisioned a much darker take on the project, which I am sure he did. Budgeted at a reported $300 million, the film grossed over $650 million worldwide, but it didn't resonate with critics. And it didn't resonate with fans. Listen, I'm a fan. I read DC and Marvel comics, and I was looking forward to this Justice League film. But to tell you the truth, it was terrible. It was a terrible film. There were some, just like Man of Steel, there were some nice effects in it. nice cinematography, all of that, but it was a bad film. And if, hopefully, maybe that's not what Zack Snyder envisioned. Right now on Rotten Tomatoes, it's 40% fresh, which is not good. The DC assemblage, this group of characters, was largely perceived as a miss in comparison to the juggernaut of Marvel Studios, which led to a creative pivot away from the tightly connected cinematic universe in favor of a more loosely assembled collection of comic book adaptations. To translate what that means is DC was trying to put together a universe much like Marvel had that culminated in the Infinity War Endgame. And it just didn't seem to work. Suicide Squad and Justice League were terrible. And they didn't pull them off. So what they started to do, what DC decided to do, was start making just these independent movies like this Wonder Woman movie that's coming up that they pulled back on because of the pandemic, but it's coming out where Wonder Woman is in the 80s. Todd Phillips made that movie Joker, which isn't necessarily part of the DC universe, but it was a film that was part of Warner Brothers DC, and it did all right. I mean, that Joker film got Joaquin Phoenix a Best Actor Oscar. It grossed over $1 billion globally, which was way more than Justice League made. Ben Affleck quit as Batman, besides having some, I think, personal problems of his own. It just didn't seem to be evolving into the type of successful franchise that Marvel has. So now they're going to do The Batman movie with Robert Pattinson in the Bruce Wayne Batman role. So we'll see how this thing goes for DC. But I wanted to bring this up, number one, because I'll be very interested to see what the Zack Snyder cut of this movie is. And number two, and most importantly for this podcast, it's coming on HBO Max. And like I said, HBO Max is like a great white that's coming to get some of these other streaming services. And this is another blow to them. This is going to be a get. This is a get for them, I think. Not for everybody, but for a certain type of person, like me. That's it for this segment. Next, I'm going to be talking about episode 3 of Creepshow, and I have an announcement to make about this darn series. Y'all, it's not good. Y'all get some refreshments and refill and all that stuff. I'll be back after we pay some bills. Thanks for listening.
What did you say? What did you say?
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right, here we go. Ready, Jack? Creepshow. We're back. Now, let me make an announcement before I even start. This is going to be it for Creepshow. I mean, it is what it is. I don't like it. It's just not a good series. I'm going to go over this last episode that I did because I watched it so I could do this podcast. And this is the time when I would normally say, if you want to go see Creepshow fresh, turn this off and go watch it and then come back. But I'm not going to say that because I'm going to hopefully save you some time and tell you what it's about. Listen, Creepshow, for those of you who watch it, those of you who have listened to me about it, it's an hour show. It has 2 episodes per show, 2 stories per episode. It is originally on Shudder. This aired last fall on the Shudder channel, which is a streaming service for horror. It is airing the first season again on AMC on Monday nights. That's what I am reviewing. I don't have Shudder as a streaming service. So if you want to watch Creepshow, it comes on, and you don't have Shudder. If you have Shudder, you can go see all of season 1. You can go binge it. And then season 2 will be released sometime next year, maybe this fall. but they're saying next year. So I don't know. I don't really care to know if season 2 is anything like what I've seen on season 1. Well, let's have at it. The first episode or story, I keep saying episode, the first story in this episode is called All Hallows Eve. Now, All Hallows Eve is a revenge tale. It uses its brief time to make us like and then dislike and then understand the main characters. It's a commendable feat to do this in short order and still make it work somehow. It takes place on a Halloween night. Halloween is a perfect staple for the darker events that should happen on shows like this, if they're good. Now, I wrote this before I made the decision to just not do any more creep shows on it. So it's written so I tried to not completely spoil the episode. And so, I'm just going to go with my synopsis here. So it is going to be vague in certain ways. And I would be more specific now that I don't really care. But I've totally forgotten the names of some of these people in the story because it was that bad as far as I was concerned. Now, it's about five kids. You have 5 people, 5 kids. And they come back. They are there with vengeance in their hearts, coming yearly and trick-or-treating to take down those who murdered them in the past. The way the segment frames them as hellish troublemakers at first, that none of the town wanted anything to do with these kids. We don't know that they are these people that have come back from the dead. We just think they're kids at the beginning. They're like little scamps. They are pretty irritating. On a personal note, I was irritated because, and again, you know me on the show, I tend to look at things in a lens that I identify with. I am a Black American. There's one Black kid in this group of other Caucasian children, and he's the one who uses bad grammar. He's got to be the guy who's like the coolest. He was straight out of Central Casting as the stereotypic cool Black kid with the suburban white kids who just seems to be a little bit more worldly than they are, because Lord knows in Black American households, we are just real adult. Our parents don't shelter us from adult things. They just expose us to anything. As a result, we're more streetwise and crafty than our childhood peers. And yes, I'm overly sensitive. In a good story, these types of characterizations are forgiven. In this case, no way. Anyway, the way the segment frames them as hellish troublemakers that none of the town wants anything to do with reveals more, and we start to sympathize with the terrorized people rather than those who have been killed. We think these kids are the troublemakers. The switch happens a little later than needed, as far as I'm concerned, but by the time it's revealed that somebody had set them up to be burned alive, watching them burn someone else alive is a little, it's just, it is what it is. I don't even know why I'm watching it. That's how I felt. The segment does use frame of reference as a weapon against us, though, which makes All Hallows Eve a clever way for Creepshow to turn expectations around. Kind of. Now, the kids in the story seem a little old to be trick-or-treating, so to take the notion that these kids are a little old to be trick-or-treating and make it about them avenging their deaths is the kind of thing that this show should engage in more. Maybe it will. I don't know, because I'm not going to be watching it anymore. But that was the first story. Sorry to be so negative. The second story is called Man in the Suitcase, which was definitely better than the first one. It's a story about a guy who's coming in town from the airport. He gets his bag from the baggage claim. On his way home, he finds that his girlfriend has broken up with him because his girlfriend thinks he's a loser. He doesn't have enough incentive, enough motivation to make something of himself. So he goes home and he discovers that there's a man all crumpled up in his suitcase who tells him he's a man who seems to be of Middle Eastern or Indian descent. And he asks him to, rather than take him to the hospital, to help him out of the bag. When he helps him out of the bag, it's very painful. He starts to pull his foot. That's very painful. And a coin pops out of his mouth. And it's revealed that every time this gentleman feels pain, gold coins pop out of his mouth. Gold coins of significant value because not only are they pure gold, but they are ancient coins. it's a setup for like this offbeat story of morality and greed, about how far someone is willing to go to make someone else suffer for their own gain. Now, I will say there's an excitement to the filmmaking here, combining it with a darker tone and a hint of some pitch black humor. There's a montage of torturing the man in the suitcase to produce more gold, and it's a strange moment, but it works from how dedicated to the bit the segment is, and it's also kind of tongue-in-cheek. The main character, the guy who found the suitcase, is rewarded for his kindness, although he gets injured. And his roommate and semi-girlfriend, the girlfriend who quit on him, who discover this guy in the suitcase and ultimately really torture him to really try to get rich quick, are punished in a hard lesson at the end. You wonder at the end what will ultimately become of them, because they are put in suitcases of their own at the end. I won't go into big details except for the guy in the suitcase at the beginning, I will say, is an evil genie. This had a really good story. I mean, as I'm telling it to you, I thought that the story was interesting and good. It just was very campy, very kind of childish, the way it was depicted. And the special effects for the genie were rather cartoonish. And maybe that's what Creepshow was about. Maybe the show is not for me. I am disappointed by the show because not so much the first story. The first story was, I didn't like the story, I didn't like the execution, I didn't like anything about it. This story, though, is the one that where I made up my mind, maybe I shouldn't even be doing Creepshow, because I thought this had an excellent story that could have been executed in a very chilling and gruesome and way with a moral to the end of the story, and instead it was just quirky and cartoonish and, I don't know, rather sophomoric. And so I decided to stop boring you with these terrible recaps of Creepshow and to stop torturing myself watching this bad television. So what I am going to do is I'm going to watch Hightown, the show that I reviewed in the fourth segment of this show, and I'm going to substitute Hightown for it, and we'll see how that goes. That's what I'm going to do. So that's it for this episode of the GSMC Television Podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to invite you to go to our website and look at all the different podcasts we have to offer. Many of them are very good. I'd like to say that mine is the best, but if you hated this one, then you won't go listen to my colleagues. So we're all very good. If you do me a favor, please subscribe to the podcast. We love your support. Rate us wherever you're listening to us, whether it be on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever. It helps us grow, and that's what we're trying to do here. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GSMC Podcast Network. You can also follow our Twitter handle, which is GSMC Television, or you can follow my Twitter handle, that's FletchDC, FLETCHDC. Also, email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com. Let me know what you'd like me to review on the show, what you think about the show, anything. And I read all the emails on the air. Listen, I want you to please look out for each other, wash your hands, stay healthy. I know a number of you are returning back to work, or you are doing some things in your lives in the next couple of weeks that you haven't been doing. Please still be careful. Stay socially distanced if you can. I happen to be a strong proponent of wearing a face mask. I know some people do not like masks. Some people think it's some sort of political statement. I just happen to think it's a good thing for us to wear during this time. Thanks again for listening. I love you guys. Be back next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.